Hello and welcome to the Instant Reaction Show. This is Cowboys Takeover Podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Jason Kenton. With me, as always, Aaron James. Aaron, it's pretty quick after the game. Game just ended. Recently, it was 27-21. It got that way after a late touchdown and 2-point conversion to make it. I guess if they would have gotten the onside kick, there would have been. Maybe the dramatic. You don't know. Didn't happen. After watching that game right now, right after, how you feeling? How did it play out? Kind of like you thought? What did you see? What are you feeling?
Yeah. So, it's rare that we have these instant game reaction episodes. So my opinion may change throughout the week or by the time we pull up again. But, I really have this conviction right now that McCarthy did what he was supposed to do. You saw some play calls. Listen, you saw some play calls that the Cowboys just couldn't execute on. I think it was more of the execution of the roster and the actual players, but what was designed actually was supposed to work.
You're a big fan of that. You're a big fan of the punt, the fake punt. When they're clearly in coverage, they're playing for the coverage because there's three linebackers standing right there, and you don't practice that every day. To me, I don't want to hear that's not about execution. That's about your coach not drilling it into you. That's getting taught. You're a punter. First off, don't put your punter in that damn situation. That's my problem. I get the execution on that. And no, it really bothered me because when it wasn't 4th and run, CD thought he could run for 18 yards. But on 4th and 1, first of all, it shouldn't have been a play call. You're right. The execution was terrible. Mike McCarthy, again, is costing this team points. He's chasing points. He's just costing them instances. I'm so bothered by Mike McCarthy on the 4th down play. Instead of kicking a field goal, decides to go for it. You don't need to chase points there. You don't know how it plays out the rest of the game. The fake punt, clearly there's a disconnect between you and the punter because everybody in America, I'm sitting here watching, it's not as bad as the Colts from years ago, but I can see the three. I can see they're in man. That's head coaching right there. That's him. That's what we've talked about for the last 2 years about him having this team disciplined. It starts with him. He's not a disciplined head coach. He makes bonehead decisions. Now we see why Green Bay ran him out of town when everybody always thought, why is Green Bay running him out of town? He seems like this good coach. He wins games. Now we're seeing why. And he's my number one fault for this game. He's my blame. I don't blame. Like, you can't put your team in, your defense played great. You made stupid bonehead decisions. You're continually trying to chase. It's so bothersome. It's some of these bonehead play calls are just so egregious. I'm sick of them. I'm sorry.
I'm frustrated too. We had, what was it, 5 pre-snap penalties, and one coming the first play into the second half. Like, how does that happen? And it's just the bonehead player mistakes. And before we even get to the 4th down calls, there was a 3rd and 1 where it was a Dowdle run up the middle, and you see the commentator Olsen commented that the left guard went right when he was supposed to go left to double team the left DT. So you see like bonehead mistakes like that. There was a screen play, I believe it was a 3rd down. It was a tight end screen. The Falcons were, everyone on the defensive side was on the left-hand side. The ball gets tipped by Judon. Otherwise, it looks like it's going to be a touchdown.
That's one of those plays you kind of wish you had back.
That's great. That's great preparation, knowing what you're going to expect, knowing what you're going to get, what coverage you're going to get. And if you look at the stat sheet, 241 passing yards compared to their 211, and then 137 rushing yards compared to their 100.
You want to look at the stat sheet, and we had 241 compared to their whatever, their 222, whatever it was. Ours was on 50 attempts. His was 19-24. My problem here is when we're looking at this game, regardless, Dowdle was again running very well, got 12 carries. the game wasn't really terribly ever out of control. Yes, Dallas lost. It was never at really out of point. Maybe at the end, maybe in that fourth quarter, you kind of felt maybe at 13-27 late. But like for them to only have him to get 12 rushes when he was really dominating, to me, it's one of those things I put on Mike McCarthy. I'm just so sick of seeing this. You sent me a stat earlier this week. They have the worst rushing yards per attempt, rushing yards per game, whatever those stats are. They're last in the NFL in all of them. And Rico's out here really putting in work, showing, once, they said Zeke's not in, Dowdle's going to be the guy. Look good. He broke some runs, looked like they were hitting those gaps today. I wanted to see more of that. They didn't need to drop back 50 times today. I get late in that game with Cooper Rush, you kind of have to because you got to get it there. But there's no reason early in that game where Dak should have been throwing as much as he should have been when it was a close game and they could have been running the ball. I'm so tired. Like, whatever happened to 4th and 1, just hand the damn ball off to your running back. We don't need all this gadget running around with the CeeDee Lamb crap.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to do it as a decoy because the team's looking for it. He's your number one guy. When you see that 4th and 1, I'm looking, if I'm defense, that, they're going to hand it to this guy. He's their guy. Why aren't we using CD as a decoy there? Fake the handoff, pop, boom, do something. If that's what you need. But I just run the ball there. Go quarterback sneak. It's 4th and 1. Go in there, man up, power up. Rico, come on. It's just the play calling. I understand you say execution, but it's the type of play calling. It's, this defense, again, it's one of those games where the defense I felt like a pretty good performance, and the offense just never put it together for him. It's tough being out there just time and time again where your offense isn't doing anything and you kind of have to like, okay, we gave up 13 points. We may not win here. Like it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you see that defense, are making stops. That 4th down at the 4th and goal for Atlanta was tough, but they kept Dallas in the game most of the time. And it's really this season, it's really been the offense that's been failing us. I'm just frustrated.
I think McCarthy felt the same way we probably both did throughout most of the game. And it's just that anytime the game was probably going to get away from us. So I think the play calling kind of matched that sense of urgency that we have to keep pace with what they're doing. Because if it gets to a 3 possession game, we're basically cooked, and that's going to be the end of that. And they did score 2 touchdowns on 2 drives where they went for it on 4th down. One was a 4th down touchdown, and I believe wasn't the very first drive.
No, that their first touchdown wasn't that one. We actually stopped them. They fumbled the ball. The one where they got the 4th down, they ended up fumbling. And that's where Dallas went back and went for it on 4th down and didn't get it. Then they drove right down and scored right after.
I think that might have been a 3rd down because their stat sheet shows 2 for 2 on 4th down.
Who? Atlanta?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they got it. The drive right before that, the drive they fumbled, they got a 4th down.
Okay.
So they got the 4th down and they fumbled later in that drive. It was like right around the red zone. They got down there, fumbled. Dallas went down for it.
Mm-hmm.
It was about a 62-yard field goal, and then they go for it. So, but that was my thing. Like, it felt like Atlanta started going for it, and then McCarthy's just like, okay, we got to follow their lead. They're trying to chase points, so should we. Like, it's his play calling so frustrating with this team. I don't get it.
So I think we both agree the defense played well, certainly good enough to win. What grade would you give the defense?
Kirk Cousins really seemed to have his way. There's a couple things, they played well enough. I would say I would give them a solid C-. I think they kept him in it, but I think Atlanta, when needed, they really did have their way. Kirk was completing passes. They kept things in front of them. But they were still giving up a good amount of rushing yards. They didn't really. And Kirk, 19 of, I think he only missed 5 passes, 19 to 24, something like that. 3 touchdowns, 222. It was a rough day, but I think they kept him in. I'm happy with what I saw. They gave him every opportunity. Whereas we talked last week, I thought there was some bigger issues. This week, I thought They kept him really in. There's a lot of that game where Dallas just. I don't know if it would have made a difference if Dak's in the game at the end there because I am a firm believer it wouldn't have, but I felt like there was a lot of change of possession there in that fourth quarter very quickly.
I was really I had texted you. I think there's just too much upside of what Trey Lance offers in that QB position, and Dak was getting these gaps to run in. And if you put someone with legs like Lance in that position, that can gash the defense, force them into different looks for the wide receivers when you have to take account for someone with those legs. I thought bringing in Trey Lance would have been beneficial there, but in hindsight, Rush did a pretty solid job. He put the ball right in the hands of a $35 million wide receiver. And if you're paid $35 million a year, you got to catch that ball. That's why you're paid that much. So he puts it on the money. And then on a fourth down, Turpin basically drops the ball because he leaves his feet when he doesn't need to leave his feet. And his hands get kind of crossed over and tied up. So, look, Rush was, I thought, very efficient, very accurate. He shows a lot of poise. He has this like Romo type of swag in the pocket that I really like. And unfortunately, it looks like he may be our starting quarterback coming up against the Eagles with Dak's hamstring looking about to basically blew up on a pass, which is probably due to some of that 15, 16-yard run he had earlier in the game. And I've experienced this myself where I went a long time without sprinting. And then when I finally decided to go and do a sprint, it didn't go well for my hamstrings.
No, but we're also not, we're not peak performance like Dak should be. That's right. All. But it was, he got that run. He was gazelling out there. I was pretty happy with it.
My point being is I don't think the guy does any sprints.
No, he probably doesn't. Dude, at that time, I felt like that's about my top speed. Like I feel like I beat him.
And if you don't, sprints is one of those things. If you don't do it consistently, your legs, you're going to lose that step. And then that's just how you lose your speed over time. And I think it's starting to show. It's just not how a part of his game he prepares for.
No, and he's not that guy you see. He's not him anymore. And the problem is, and when you were mentioning putting Lance in earlier, my only problem is with that, you just signed Dak to such a big contract. I don't want to see the gimmicky stuff. To me, Dak, you're getting paid now. Dak, you're out there until your leg falls off at this point. We're giving you $60 million. You're playing until you can at this point. I don't want to see gimmicky stuff. If unless he can't 100% go, unless his hamstring fell off, throw him out there against the Eagles and let the Eagles beat him up too. You're getting paid all this money. Go out and do it, bro. This is what you wanted. You wanted all that money. Dallas, they made a mistake when they signed him. They're hamstrung everywhere else. Get it. But it really put them in a bad position because now when that offense isn't looking good, they can't win ball games. And it's downhill. Yeah, I think McCarthy should be fired. He shouldn't. It's going to bother me. I know he's going to stay till the end of the year, but McCarthy should be gone. And they need to, because this season's over. What did the deadline's Tuesday? I think trade deadline's the election day.
I think it's this coming week. Yeah.
So, if you're Dallas, are you really, I said it before the pregame show. If you're Dallas, I think you really need to look at who you want to. I don't know if you want to be 100% sellers, but I do really, really think trading Micah is a smart move at this point because you've pretty much said you're not going to sign him, signing Dak, CD, and Diggs is still on the roster. So I think, if you can move Diggs, power to that as well. But I think Micah has to get you 2 first rounds. Let Micah get you something.
I think a team like the Chicago Bears would be.
Listen, my buddy, I hope it's not them because my buddy, there's a guy. He's been talking about it all season. He's like, Micah's getting traded. Chicago's going to get him. That's all he's been saying. So if he goes to Chicago, I'm not going to hear the end of it. So I really hope it's not Chicago. Hey, if they throw us a couple, 2 first-round picks. Team like Chicago rebuilding, right now, if you could get it for next season, you still may get something low 20s or high 20s, I guess, in 21, 22, 23, depending. Listen, I'll take it. I think Dallas has to really consider. Problem is, you sign Dak, and if you sign your franchise quarterback, you can't really blow it up too much, depending on how they can get out of it. But man, I'd even think Martin at this point, unless Martin wants to retire a Cowboy. If I'm Dallas, I just Dak's not it anymore.
No, I don't think that's it. I think with Parsons, I'm definitely okay with trading them. I would say most of Cowboys Nation would think we're crazy for thinking that way. But if you're Jerry Jones, you want the superstars on your team. It's not. I don't think it's going to happen. I would be shocked if it actually happened. But you're in a really good position on the selling point, like you were saying, because Parsons, you have them for the rest of this year, and then you can potentially tag them for 2 more years before you have to pay them if you decide to go that route. And then on the Cowboys side, our season, you realistically can only have one more loss the rest of the way out. So we're really not buyers because we're not going to get a return. It's too risky to go out there and try to make some moves, bring in like a strong number 2 and maybe even a big boy on the defensive line to try to shape things up going into the second half of the season. I don't think, you'd be that'd be really irresponsible for you to try to piece this thing together. But with that being said, hopefully Dak is able to play. And I would disagree with you. I think even if Dak is, I'd say 70% or 75%, I would still go with Cooper Rush. I think you need the mobility that Rush has in the pocket.
Listen,
the escapability. Dak's not going to have that, and we've seen him sit like a sitting duck back there, and he's been getting eaten up all season long.
Listen, I don't want to be. I'm not trying to be mean here. But if injuries could end a career. Blows out the hamstring, we have to pay the contract or get a new quarterback. Listen, that's all, I'm not saying. I don't want it to happen. I'm just saying.
I don't think that's the thing. You still get the dead cap.
Do you? And when you look at it, the good thing with Micah is you still get him next season. So Micah, you still do get the next. So if Dallas, if you're this season, unless you really, 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 really want to run it back next year, and hope. But to me, I think there's too much because you're not paying them. So you could still, with another year from Micah, you could still go and get that. I think it's next year. Or I think it's there. He has the club option. They signed him through next year because he was drafted in 21. Yeah, because you can get a couple of firsts. And it really depends. I guess it depends because, like you said, yes, it's irresponsible to really go out and remove those moves and try to get these guys. The very business wise, your best asset is Micah. Go get some future prospects. Keep some of the cap down. Try to hit on some of those. If you can get a couple of first rounds and flip them, then you help build for the future. I think that's probably the best thing to do this season because you're really, like you said, realistically one loss. And they definitely have more than that on the schedule left. And then if Dak does miss some time, you're pretty much out of it. So I think, you realistically, you look to be sellers. You look to hope to build towards next year. I know that's not something the fans want to hear. And the organization usually doesn't want that, but I think that's probably the best case right now, looking at the way the franchise is. And, I'm sure Jerry knows. I'm sure Jerry knows McCarthy's not coming back next season.
Do you think we win today if Parsons plays?
I don't know. He's a game changer, so it's tough to say he's not making a difference. In some of these games, yes, because I think this was a closer game. A guy like that can change the game. And just, he's Reggie White, he's Lawrence Taylor, he's Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, actually, but he's that type of player. He's Miles Garrett. He's a game changer. He's an all-pro. So I don't know if they win, but he's definitely. I think there's a couple of games in here the momentum swings if he's out there.
Yeah, I think it feels like we were a couple sacks away from the momentum really staying with us. And if you have Parsons and Bland playing in this game, I think Falcons are a little bit more mindful, and their strategy changes a little bit because you just can tell that they weren't afraid of us.
No.
They weren't afraid to play us this game at
And
all.
and the
Not
other
worried.
issue, they had 50% of their sacks they've had all season today.
Yeah.
We went into this game saying, they have 6 sacks all year. They have 3 today. And I even at the one drive, they had back-to-back sacks. The team that had 6 sacks all year got 2 in 2 plays. Like, come on. So there's a lot of issues. I do think, Dallas, if you could trade off some pieces, if you could be sellers at the deadline, you can still keep most of your core. Maybe a guy like Tank because he's gone, depending on what the injury is. Micah, if you want to think about Diggs, I think if you could get rid of some of those dudes, clear some cap, bring in some draft capital, and then figure things out from there. And I do think you're on to something. Maybe you play Trey Lance a little bit more in the season if this hamstring thing persists. It did look legitimate when he started. It did so but hamstrings, you never know, they could turn into an 8-week thing. So I think you have to see at some point what Trey is moving forward. I think that's right now the big takeaway. Kind of Dallas should be sellers and see what you have in Trey Lance and should kept him around for another season.
Either that or try to see if there are any teams out there that want to bring them on and recoup at least your draft pick that you gave up for them.
If I would do that, I'd be more inclined to trade Cooper Rush because I don't want to win. Like if I don't have Dak, I get like every team, but you got to think when I'm looking at the other side, I don't want to win games. Cooper Rush is going to help me win a couple of games here and there. Mm-hmm. Maybe try to trade Cooper, you get more back what you'd get for Lance, and then play Lance a little bit to see what you have in Lance. I think that would be the way to go, especially now because I'm in trade mode. I'm in let's get as much capital we can this season with what we have. Because we're not winning this year, which is tough to say after week 9, but I didn't think it'd be this bad.
Even with the draft capital we were to get, let's say from a Micah or for some other trades, I'm not looking to use that capital in the draft per se. I want to use those picks to pick up a veteran that can make a difference today. Because I don't want to hit the reset button.
Well, I'm looking more towards 25. So I don't like when you say today, I'm not turning them and then flipping those dudes right away for other guys. Like I would rather wait till next off season, either because you can always trade for offensive linemen. I feel like the offensive linemen around the draft are always those big dudes to go. So wait till like maybe you get one of those type of deals, or you can always. To me, I want to rebuild the offensive line. I want to draft offensive line. We need to start getting there. Do offensive line, defensive line, get those rushers, and get those O linemen. I think that's what you really need to look for. That's why I think get the capital, and then you could figure out and go get. If you have enough draft picks, you can kind of do what you want, and then figure it out from there. But I think getting as much as you can going into the draft next season or in the off season, and then you can flip it for an offensive lineman that, I don't think you can do anything for this season. So maybe use it next season for maybe offensive lineman like that dude that wants to get signed and can't, and then Dallas can do something like that. But I think Kansas City did that with their left tackle at Baltimore. They, got traded for like a second round pick of the draft. I do something like that.
I don't see us being competitive next year if we have another 4 or 5 rookies in our starting lineup on both sides of the ball.
Well, with Dak and CD getting paid, how many you can't bring in a bunch of veterans making decent money because you can't afford it. That's why we're getting rid of Micah and Diggs because you can't afford it.
If you have D-Law coming off potentially, whether it be via cut or something along those lines, I think his cap was close to 15 to 18.
But next year's Dax goes up. Dax and CeeDee Lamb's both go up though. Like they're going to go from what they're making, kind of the little silly money they're making, to the outrageous. And then if Diggs is still there, Diggs's contract is large. So with those three guys, Martin still. So with those, it's like I get a couple dudes are coming off, but you have too much to really, I think, improve with a legitimate offensive line that you would need to say this takes me to the next level. In my opinion, I don't think you can afford those type of guys.
Well, and we're also probably forgetting, and we can discuss again, obviously, but I think Bland would probably be just as attractive for buyers in the market than Parsons.
Yeah, but you can't. The reason you're trading Parsons is because you can't sign him. I'm not trading Parsons because I want to. I'm trading because I can't sign him. That's
Bland's going to be just as expensive.
Yeah, but to me, you're not keeping Bland and Diggs. Once you get ready to sign Diggs or Bland, Diggs is gone. That's okay. I'm saying now, if you get rid of Diggs, you sign Micah, then you probably don't sign Bland. I think they want to keep Bland around. I think that's their thought process. Micah leaves. Once they signed Diggs, kind of like they did once they got Diggs. Once Diggs kind of hit, it felt like right. Wasn't that Byron came in, was beginning with them. Byron was gone. So I think that's kind of how they're going to play it out. Because unless you're keeping Diggs for life as contract, but I don't see if you want to run it back, you don't have to trade Micah. Micah's here next year still. You don't know. We just don't know. But it's a tough loss today, Aaron. It's not what I expected. I did well. It's exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
But when coming in this season, I think I had him 14-3. I think I had a better record than you did, which I'm so disappointed in myself now. I drank the Kool-Aid, Aaron. I drank the Kool-Aid. But thank each and every one of you who checked this out today, or if you're checking this out later in the day or later in the week. Thank you so much for watching. It was a tough loss today, 27-21. Atlanta beat Dallas. I don't know what else you could say. It's another one of those games that Dallas just offense kind of couldn't get him going, and Dak couldn't get him going. Defense kind of played well, but gave up some points. It's just the way it's been this season. For Dallas, if you're a Dallas fan, it's a tough one. It's a tough season to swallow. It's just not what you expected. But you never know. Hey, we've seen it happen before. It could happen again. And you didn't want to go into playing the Eagles next week, coming off a loss, especially this way. And now you might be down Dak. But we will be back later this week, probably Thursday evening, with the hosts of on the Ring the Bell Network. The Eagles do have their own show over there, so we're joining with the co-hosts of that show. I kind of do a group combined show to talk about just go over next week's show. It is a big matchup. It's Philly at Dallas at 4:25 next Sunday. Not the game I think we expected. The Eagles could be 6-2 going into it against 3-5 Cowboys. But either way, it's always a big matchup. So appreciate you all for checking us out. You'll catch us Thursday evening discussing the matchup against the Eagles. For Mr. Aaron James, I'm Jason Ken. It's a sad Sunday. No Sunday fun day. It's sad Sunday today. For Cowboys Takeover Podcast. Enjoy. We'll bring the energy next week. We'll have it Thursday because we're going to be talking some smack. But enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you're out on the West Coast, have fun. You got all day left. It's like 1:00 there. It's already getting dark here. It's terrible. But love you all. Thank you all. God bless. See you all Thursday to discuss the big matchup with the Birds.